Right, this video today is I'm going to talk about the part within the psyche that is what I suppose Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, because it's kind of connected to the two that I've just been talking about, but it's a different kettle of fish again. There are so many little things, well, this is quite a big thing, that kind of all line up and go hand in hand. And what I want to do is to give you a kind of directory, in a way, of what's inside, because I think that when we understand something, when we have an understanding of what something is within us, when it comes up, rather than it being able to totally take over the situation and you sink into it, there's a chance of mindfulness, of going, oh, I see that. I can see that thing in me, but it's not me. It's operating in this, but you're not going to identify with it. And once you stop identifying with what's happening, then the healing can begin, because then you can get to know what it is, because you've got that distance. It's not that it terrifies you anymore. When you feel it coming, you can think, oh, there's that. And then you can look at it in a different way than you would when it comes in and consumes you, because this particular part is it's quite destructive, in as much as I think it's the thing within us that frightens us the most, because it has it's so hurt and so angry and in so much pain, and it has so much self-loathing that it kind of lashes out. It lashes out at you, and it lashes out in the world. Depending, if you're somebody who tends to internalize yourself more, you're more likely to for it to turn it into you. Where if you're somebody who externalizes, then you'll probably push it onto other people more. And there'll be a combination, because when it's up and about, it's very hard to function through it. So yeah, I'm going to talk about that one. It's difficult to look at it from your perspective of your normal thinking without hating it, because we don't like it and we want it to go away, because it feels so horrible, so unpredictable, so uncomfortable, and it feels dangerous within us. And so what we try to do is keep it pushed down and not allow it to surface, because when it does, it can cause destruction to you and to others. And so it's kind of like when we're little, when bad things happen, it's like we have a pit, and this part of us lives at the bottom of the pit. When something horrible happened, we pushed it down there because it was too uncomfortable to go through our daily existence with it up and about. And so we have to put a distance between us and it. And so it's like we pushed it down into a dark hole and we've left it there. Oh, bang. And then anything else that happens that we don't like, we push that down there too. And gradually over time, this pit becomes this place of just abject misery, because it's everything that we didn't want. And obviously it feels rejected. And it ends up down there because something external has happened which has caused fright and fear. So it's like we detach that fright and fear, we chuck it down the hole, but it's still sentient. So it lives down there in abject pain and terror and agony. And so when it comes up, that's what it brings, because it has no choice but to bring that, because that's all it is. And it wants to be heard. It really desperately wants you to see and hear it. When it sees and hears you in another energy where you're happy and contented, it gives it more misery, because it means you've moved further away from it and less likely to see it. And so it acts in a very nasty and violent way towards you, because it's so exasperated and sad and cut off and it's not being heard, and it just so desperately wants to be, because it wants to be let out of the prison that you've put it in. It can present in all different sorts of ways, but when you feel it, it feels like agony. It's just so uncomfortable, because it is in agony. It wants, because it's in so much pain, it wants to hurt and destruct and break. it externalizes from itself all the things it feels about itself. I mean, it is basically self-loathing, self-hatred, and it feels it so strongly that it can't accept love and nice things because it really doesn't think that it deserves it. It thinks that it's monstrous and devilish because basically that's what you've done to it. You've pushed it down there and you've made it into the criminal, but it isn't really. It feels like it, and it grows into that force, but it isn't. It's just lost and alone and sad, and it just needs lots of attention. But it's very difficult to do that because it means jumping down into the pit and being with it. And we've been training ourselves our whole life not to do that, to stay as far away from it as possible, because we have this feeling that if we go in the pit, we'll never get out, that it will take us over. And it's frightening because it's so unpleasant and it wants to destruct. It's the part that's responsible for self-harm and for harming other people. It's one of the parts that harms other people. I'll talk about the other one either in a minute, or if I forget, I'll make another video about it. This part isn't, maybe I'll just talk about it now. This part isn't cold and calloused like this other part that I'll talk about in a minute. This part is, it's just hurting. It hurts so much. It's so full of pain and neglect and rejection that it explodes outwards in a violent manner because that's what it's holding and it can't help it. And so it just really, really needs a lot of love and attention to bring it back into alignment. But it's really difficult to do. And when that part is sparked, it sparks the panic, and it also sparks the dictator because the panic reacts to it. It's, oh my God, it's that, I hate it. Oh God, it's going to kill me. And the dictator wants to push it back down the hole and put the lid back on and go, it's okay, I've got this. That's not going to bother us. But it is going to bother you. It's going to bother you until you accept it and see it properly for what it is. And it is about dropping down in the pit. Because the thing is, what we do is we spend our lives trying to climb out of the pit and to stay at the top. But it's like it's got a rope around our ankle and it pulls that rope and we're pulled and then we're hanging on the edge trying not to drop back down. But to really get to unpick it from where it is, we've got to accept that we've got to go in the pit. We can't bring it out of the pit until we've been down to the pit and made it. So it's basically, we have to give it a bunk up. It can't climb out on its own because it has no idea how. And it's distraught. It's lost, it's alone, it's sad, it's angry, it wants to hurt everything because it hurts so much. It's pain. It's basically pain that's been rejected, and you've rejected it because it was too much to handle. It's not your fault you rejected it, you had to, because you have to go around in the world. And my mum used to, my home life when I was a child was very uncomfortable, very, very horrible. So I'd have to leave that environment and go to school. And so I would have to push that down in the pit to go to school, because otherwise how would I function? But then once we've pushed it down and hidden it in the pit, we don't want to take it back out again. We don't want to re-look at that. And so we kind of just keep trying to move away from it. But we can't ultimately, because it will always come back, because it's down there. So we have to get down in the pit and let it show us everything that it is, even if it feels horrible. And it will feel horrible. It does feel horrible. It is, it is everything you've rejected, basically. It's all of the things about yourself you didn't like, you didn't want anyone to see, all the things that happened to you that made you feel bad. That's what it is. And it sits there and it festers, and it will stay there festering for the rest of your life unless you go down to it. And it's hard because the dictator and the panic don't want you to go down there, and they will try anything to stop you going down there because they don't think that you're right in wanting to welcome this back in. They see it as the evil thing that it presents itself as, but it isn't really evil. It's frightened and afraid. It's a child. It's another child. It's like a feral, hurting child that's taken on all of the pain of the abuse that you had, and it's rejected. So the only way for it to stop is to be brought back into love, to see that it is accepted and that you can love it for what it is, even though it's difficult. But if you've got that place of detachment from it and you're looking in on it, and you know all the things that happen to you, you know what's it's holding on to, and you know they are yours. And without accepting them, it's not going to change. So it's a process. It's a long process of every time you feel it, you go to it, and you keep going to it, and every time you do that, and it tells you something it's feeling, and you accept that, it becomes a little bit lighter. And gradually over time, it can diminish completely and stop being there. It can be brought back into the fold, accepted for what it is, accepted that it's a bit broken and that sometimes it will still be nasty, and because it's all it knows. But it's not being nasty because at the base of it, it is nasty. It's doing it because it's so hurt and exasperated, and it just wants your love. The other thing I was saying about the more destructive one, that's what that's what comes out in people when they move past that place into a darker place. That thing that likes to hurt and destruct, it comes from that, but it's more detached. It's detached from emotions. That's what happens when things. I was watching this thing the other night on Netflix. I think it's called The Killer Next Door, something like that. It's an American thing. I didn't even know why I was drawn to watch it, but I realised while I was watching it, because we are drawn to things. We're drawn to things because they've got something for us. And I was thinking, this is a bit dark, and started watching it. It was about this Nazi man who's living in America, who was one of the executioners at the gas chambers in Poland, and they discovered him, and he's like old now, obviously, but he was arrested and put on trial. It's quite interesting if you can stomach it. And I started watching this, and after it was showing pictures of the Holocaust and things, after a while I started to feel this really uncomfortable energy in me, because you look at those sort of pictures and you just can't fathom how human beings could do that to other human beings, how that amount of destruction, and it's just yeah, it's hideous, isn't it? It's horrendous. So in me, my feminine energy is going, oh God, I can't bear it, I can't watch this. And then I had an image. I had to stop it because this energy was coming up so strongly. And then I felt this. I had this image of this one man's face that was dead but lying mouth open, and he looked like the same sort of ages as my sons. And I was sat there thinking, how could anyone do that? And then I felt this energy come in, and it said, I do that. I do all of that. And so I started to watch it and feel it, and then I went into it, because we all have everything in us. So you ask that question of yourself, how can that happen? You'll be shown if you're willing enough to learn. I mean, at one point in the past, if I'd felt that come into me like that, I would have shat myself. I would have been terrified of it, but I'm not scared of anything now, because I know that we all have everything. So yeah, I went into that, and it showed me images of watching a little child trying to get into the gas chamber. It was excited to get in there because it thought that it was going to be a good thing. And I saw it from this element, this human element that was watching it, trying to get into the gas chamber. And this part found it highly amusing. It knew what was going to happen, but it found it funny that this child was eager to get in. It's got like a really dark, sick humour to it. And it had absolutely no emotion at all. The only way that it got emotional gratification was in the disempowering and hurting of others. But from that perspective, it doesn't see itself as evil. It sees itself as superior and better than the silly minions that it's able to destroy. It doesn't feel like evil. It's the outside looking in, the part that isn't evil, that looks at it and goes, that's evil. But from itself, it doesn't feel evil. It feels powerful and it feels strong. It's totally disconnected from an emotional context. So, yeah, that is. It told me when I was looking at it that it was responsible for every barbaric act that had happened, every bit of torture, everything that means domination of another thing. It's responsible for all of that throughout the world and always has been. And yeah, I saw that it comes from when that dark place gets so dark, it moves even further into the darkness to get away from it. And I could also see from that perspective how, because that is in all of us, it's in all of us because it would be necessary if we had to protect our tribe. Like most of us, it doesn't have the strength to come through because the compassionate, loving side is stronger, much stronger, and much more able to hold fort because that's how it should be. But when things have happened that are particularly badly dark, and that kicks off. So, if, an example, in a war situation or where you have to protect your tribe, that comes forward then because it is completely callous and it has no emotional attachment, and so it can do bad things. So yeah, because we all have everything, and so you can see how in situations like war, when people are kind of brainwashed into believing these things, that's where they go to, and that's how all these atrocities can happen, because what's happening around them is so horrendous, and of course somewhere in them they know that it's very, very horrendous, so it's too much for the psyche to be able to stay there, and so they move over to this side where there is no emotional attachment to anything. So yeah, they are sort of different parts, but one leads from the other. All of these things, like the panic, the dictator, this pain body one, and this real nasty bastard, they're all connected. They're all kind of the same sort of pattern of things, and they are the things that frighten us the most. They're the things that stop us when we're empathic people and we're very loving and kind. We don't like that that's in us, and it frightens us that if we go to it, if we get to know it, that it could take us over and make bad things happen. That's what I used to think. I used to think there's a monster in there, and if I look at that monster, it's going to come out and it's going to ruin everything. But that isn't the case, because you shine love onto it, you shine light onto it, you take that lovingness to it, you can see it for what it actually is. And it's disconnection. It's a feeling of not being loved and accepted, to the point where there's so much hurt that it moves to a place where it can't feel anything except for gratification at hurting others. And you don't have to worry that it's going to come out and cause terrible destruction, because it just wants your love and attention. It's far more likely to do that if it doesn't get your love and attention. But it is a scary thing. It's a scary place to go. And, you know, when we feel that in us, we will just want to get away from it. We just want to, you know, not accept it's there, because it feels so horrible to have, and it feels shameful to have that inside of us. But it is just on the scale of the psyche, it's in there, it's part of it. And without knowing it, we can never dismantle it. So, yeah, I think that's everything about that. It's probably not everything, because there's always more. Sometimes I sit down to do this, and there's so much that I can't even, one thought leads to another. These things are difficult to deal with. They are difficult to handle, and it's scary doing it on your own. You know, I did it on my own, but I think I am in quite a minority, because when I tell people about this, you know, it sort of frightens them to think that you're doing it on your own. So what I'm going to do, I'm moving in a couple of weeks, but then I'm going to take on more people that want help. So if it's something that you would like help with, you know, this whole thing of this being able to drop in to yourself, then send me an email and we can arrange some sessions and, you know, help. It's my heart's desire to help people out of that place. I lived in that misery. I lived in that place of fear and discontentment for so long that now I've discovered this way out of it. I just want to share it with people. I want to help people to get out of that place. And, you know, I know that there's nothing in you that isn't in me, and there's no judgment here. And so, you know, if it's something you'd be interested in doing, get in contact. And I'm also thinking of starting a Facebook group to talk about these things, because it's all very well me talking to you, but there's quite a few people that contact me and they're saying kind of similar things, and it would be nice for people to have a group, I think. So if that's something you'd be interested in, comment on that too, and I'll set that up. And yeah, so I've got to go get on. Got loads to do. Got to pack. Got to take dog to the vet. My creatures are off tonight on their long journey to England. They have no idea, but yeah, they are. So yeah, I don't suppose you really needed to know that. So I'm going to go, and I'll speak to you soon.